Hello and welcome to the very first edition of Smart Cookie Chatter. I'm very excited to be bringing this to you guys. I asked you what burning questions you had for me, and now I'm here to answer them for you. So let's get started with our very first question, which is from Steve. Steve asks, so I don't even know what temperament means in cooking. It's just way over my head, so do I need to know some basics? Steve, quite honestly, I don't know what temperament means either. I think you're referring to tempering. And if that's the case, then there's two kinds we can talk about. First of all, there's tempering of eggs. Now, it's just a fancy word for trying to make sure your eggs don't scramble when you add a hot mixture to them. Say you're making a custard or you're making ice cream. That usually involves tempering of eggs. All you have to do is slowly pour the hot mixture into the egg mixture and whisk it constantly, and that keeps your eggs from scrambling because nobody wants scrambled eggs in their ice cream. That's just not good. Okay, and then we also have tempering chocolate. Now, this is a more complicated process. Just to put it simply, it's heating and cooling chocolate in order to make sure that it dries nice and glossy and smooth, has that really pretty finish, and that it has that nice bite that we all love to get when we eat chocolate. Next question comes from Chris. Chris asked me, can you tell us what sort of nail polish you wear in your photos and videos? I'm very glad you asked this, Chris, because I love to paint my nails. I do it at least once a week. Unfortunately, they're naked today because I didn't have time to paint them this weekend, but I digress. I love to use OPI. I think that's a great nail polish brand. I also love China Glaze. When it comes to colors, I will paint my nails anything fun and bright. I've done everything from cupcakes on my nails to penguins. That was a recent project. That was fun. And I also love glitter nail polish. That's a favorite of mine. I hope you guys are ready for Margot's questions because she has about 20 of them here. She essentially gives me a couple of ultimatums, so I'm going to tell you which ones I pick. First, she says, mayo or Miracle Whip? I hate both. I would not touch mayonnaise with a 10-foot pole. Butter or margarine? I've always used butter, so I guess that makes me a little biased towards it. I honestly can't say if margarine's better just because I've never used it, but I'm a butter girl all the way. Sugar or Splenda? Depends what we're talking. If I'm making some delicious baked good, I want sugar because there is a difference in flavor. But if I'm just trying to sweeten my Rice Krispies in the morning when I have my cereal or sweeten my tea, I go for Splenda because you get that little bit of sweetness you need without all the calories. Electric or gas stoves? I unfortunately have an electric stove, but I much prefer gas. I think they heat up better and just get hotter in general. Frozen yogurt or ice cream? Definitely ice cream. Frozen yogurt's good too, but I like my ice cream. Whole milk or skim, and does this make a difference while baking that you know of? Well, if we're talking baking, I think it definitely does make a difference if you use whole milk or skim. Skim milk's obviously healthier, but because baking is such a science, it might mess up the consistency and the final outcome of whatever it is you're baking. It kind of just depends on the recipe. Now, with cooking, it's a little bit easier to switch out one for the other, and you're usually okay with that. If we're talking about drinking, I definitely go with skim milk. It's healthier for you, less fat, it's the way to go. Although I typically drink almond milk, to be honest. I'm kind of grossed out by regular milk. Don't judge me. Okay, and then finally she says, do you like to listen to music while cooking or do you prefer company in the kitchen? And who in your family taste tests your recipes? First of all, I love listening to music while cooking. I like to jam out while I'm cooking away, and sometimes I sing like a loser because it just makes it so much more fun. I don't really prefer having company in the kitchen. I don't know why that is. I think it's kind of because it's my meditation time and I like to be alone. Plus I get nervous when there's people in there with me. Unless it's you guys, of course. I love having you in the kitchen. And my mother and my dog are my main taste testers. My dog Reese is more a taste tester by accident because when things hit the floor, she gets to them before you can even blink. Andrew wants to know what my favorite midnight snack is. I don't know if I have anything in particular, but my one main criteria is it's gotta be chocolate. Something deep, dark, and simply chocolatey. Liana asks, what dessert most reminds you of your childhood? Now this is one I thought about for a little bit because my mom wasn't a huge baker when I was younger. If we had desserts in the house, it was more store-bought stuff, but what I do remember more than anything is getting Dairy Queen Blizzards. My dad would bring them home after work, or we'd all go out as a family to our local Dairy Queen because we only lived a couple minutes away. Man, were those the good old days. Now I live like an hour and a half away and it's a tragedy, but I'll save you that sad story. They were my childhood, and I think that's why I'm so obsessed with blizzards now today even. Macy says, what's your favorite breakfast for dinner food? I love this question, Macy, because I love breakfast foods, and I would definitely eat them all 3 meals of the day, and sometimes I do. I make omelets for myself a lot for dinner because they're packed with protein and they're very good for you. But I think my favorite things to have for breakfast for dinner is chocolate chip pancakes, and I'm talking loaded with chocolate, and my signature Hashi Sammy. It's a fried hash brown topped with a fried egg, some melted cheese, and then sandwiched between 2 slices of fluffy bread, and my lord, it is like the most amazing thing on the planet. If you haven't tried it yet, you can get that recipe on my website, the Hashi Sammy. Give it a go. Nina asks me if there are any healthy substitutions I use in my recipes. Well, I definitely use egg beaters all the time. They're so good for you. They're super low calorie. I love almond milk. I'm a big promoter of that. It's completely delicious, and it's like 1/4 of the calories of whole milk. It's a huge savings and totally worth it. I also use Splenda from time to time, and I try to use reduced fat or fat-free cheeses when I'm trying to be more on the healthy side. Taraman asks, salt or pepper, or fill in the blank. If we're talking just salt or pepper, I don't really use pepper that often, but I use kosher salt in just about everything. It adds so much flavor. And if you're just letting me pick my own seasonings, I love garlic. I think garlic makes just about any dish better, except maybe like cupcakes or something. It's not a place for garlic, but I also love red pepper flakes. They add such great heat with just a little pinch of them. It's a great way to kick up whatever you're making. Eleanor asks, what's your favorite and least favorite thing to cook? This was a toughie, but my favorite thing to cook is cookies. I love baking them. For one, you get to eat the cookie dough, which is, in my opinion, almost better than the finished cookie. And you also have an excuse to taste a cookie fresh out of the oven. And let's be honest, that's when they're the best, when they're all warm and gooey. And there's so many different kinds you can play around. It's such a fun thing to bake. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I don't enjoy cooking anything that has like potatoes or butternut squash. Don't get me wrong, I love both of those foods. I absolutely adore them. In fact, if you're a follower on my site, you know I have a slight obsession with potatoes. But it's cooking them that I don't like, because you have to peel them, which I'm terrible at. A lot of the times my mom won't even let me do it because she's afraid I'm going to wind up cutting my fingers off. So next we have Nettie, who wants to know, what is the main source of the recipes you have? Family, food blogs, TV, experimentation, etc.? Well, recently I've been using most of my own recipes. I really wanted to be able to say that it was my creation, so I've been trying really hard to move away from cookbooks and food blogs and all that. Although I do often use things from Food Network because they make the most amazing recipes. I think they have yet to let me down. And I very often use family recipes that have been passed down, because the things that my great-grandmother used to make, and my grandmother, and even my mother, are some of the best things I've ever eaten, and new recipes can never compete with that. Finally, our last question is from Julia, and Julia asks, who would be your dream person to cook with? Now, I'd be honored to cook with anybody from the Food Network. I think it would be a blast, but if I had to pick somebody, I would say Pat and Gina Neely from Down Home with the Neelys. Have you ever seen their show? They're like the most fun people ever. They're just this huge ball of energy, and they're joking around with each other, and you should always have fun like that when you're in the kitchen. I think it'd be like a party if I could cook with them. They're a blast and a half. So that's it for today. Those are all the questions we have. But if you didn't get a chance to ask something, or maybe you did and you got another question now, there's always next week. So head over to my Smart Cookie Chatter page, submit your question, and I promise you I will answer it in next week's video. I can't wait to see what questions you guys will have next time for me.